Our next speaker is Dr. Deepa Driver, who's a trade unionist and academic. Deepa was an observer at the extradition hearing of Julian Assange, and so Deepa is going to speak to us about the topic of freedom of speech, expression and academic freedom in the context of the case of Assange. Thank you, Deepa.
Thanks, Esther. And thank you, everyone, for inviting me to speak. I must admit, I felt a bit nervous because it is a privilege to speak on this panel alongside those whose courage and work I have respected and have learned from over the years. And it is also a privilege to stand in solidarity with a fellow trade union comrade and a fellow academic whose work has contributed so much to our understanding of narratives, of spin, of lobbying, and of manipulation. It is also a privilege to be alongside those in the audience from different walks of life who gather here to show solidarity with David, particularly because I was born in a country partitioned by its colonial British masters. Those of us who are here because we care not just about David and academic freedom, but also about how knowledge is created, how it's developed, how it's disseminated, and how our rights to free speech and association are trampled on or cherished in a democracy. Those who care about knowledge we create do not simply wish to sit in the ivory towers of academia. They also wish to engage with the realities of the world around us so that our academic work can do more to address the burdens and problems that people face around the world. To many of us, academic freedom may seem like a very abstract concept and a very remote idea. Like the right to peacefully protest, it has been taken for granted in much of higher education, and only some have exercised this right with any strength and vigor in the same way as David has. So I thought I might point out some of the features of academic freedom that might be quite nebulous and try and tie it down to something more meaningful. Academic freedom includes the rights to freedom in teaching and discussion, freedom in carrying out research without commercial or political interference, freedom to publish and disseminate one's research findings, freedom from institutional censorship, including, very importantly, the right to express one's opinion publicly about the institution or the education system in which one works, and the freedom to participate in professional and representative academic bodies such as your trade unions, etc. Broader civil rights and civil liberties and human rights are, of course, linked to academic freedom because our educators also have the rights to freedom of thought, conscience, religions, opinion, expression, association, and assembly. And it is important that we all respect that they exercise their civil liberties too. This includes the right to contribute to social change through free expression of opinion on matters of public interest. This right does not fall away when we deal with controversial or sensitive issues. Authoritarian governments and neoliberal patterns of funding research alongside growing pressures to seek sponsorship and neoliberal strategies, of course, of casualized employment, greater precarity at work, have stealthily curtailed many of these rights. At many universities, such as mine, statutes that have enshrined the right to academic freedom have been done away with and subsumed within rather banal and unilaterally alterable HR policies. So there is a veneer of freedom, a veneer of development of knowledge, while the pressures of day-to-day performance requirements within the neoliberal university to meet new managerial approaches to metrics and measurement prevent any meaningful autonomy and freedom. This is bad for us as academics. This is bad for our students. This is bad for our institutions as places of learning, bad for civil society, and bad in the long term for knowledge development. My union, UCU, and my colleagues, particularly those working on the BRAC Members Standing Committee, for example, have pointed out time and again how scholarship has suffered and racism has thrived as a result of powerful and authoritarian influence that seeks to involve us, for example, in criminalizing others. And Prevent is a prime example of such legislation, where including in areas such as national security, funding and self-censorship results in the parroting of establishment lines, and some topics are just too hot to handle. As a UCU report recently pointed out, this is a problem that doesn't just affect scholarship and research in higher education. We are concerned at the number of instances in which academic judgments of educational professionals have been overturned by management for completely non-educational reasons. Educational professionals must have the ability to make decisions without fear of reprisal or penalty. Personally, I've been campaigning for the freedom of Julian Assange, and I'd like to briefly point out, because there are so many parallels, how little has been done on the back of evidence that WikiLeaks, Julian, and Chelsea Manning revealed at great personal cost. Instead, an injustice is being perpetrated as a publisher who published facts which have still not been undermined in any way. WikiLeaks has a 100% record of accuracy. He's locked up in Belmarsh prison, despite winning his case, during COVID, where he is locked down 22 hours a day, at times without heating, and definitely without access to his warm clothing, which was delivered in September. He has a chronic lung condition, and therefore you can imagine the risks that are posed to him during COVID. So this is a situation where war criminals like Tony Blair, Hillary Clinton, and George Bush, and destroyers of life like drone bombing Barack Obama, are feted and paraded as people who provide good sense, while the real people who risk their lives and risk their liberty to tell the truth are undermined. We can see what's happening to David as something of an extension of what's happening to truth tellers like Julian. In Julian's case, for example, it is a very deliberate and well-networked, well-organized strategy by the establishment to silence critics of the system and those who offer dissenting opinions. To get them, people like Julian and Chelsea, who was locked in a box for a very long time and often imprisoned without her clothes, to bear a very, very high personal cost, despite the fact that those who did the crimes that Chelsea and Julian have revealed are the ones who've engaged in seriously criminal behavior. Rather than engaging with the substance of the evidence that these people have revealed, what has been done is they are talked about in very demeaning terms, whether it is talking about Julian's body odor or talking about how he ill-treats his cat or smears feces on the wall. Therefore, I urge you to join us today in publicly and loudly and truthfully proclaiming that we stand alongside David Miller, and we are here to stamp out any efforts by those who use their networks, their positions of influence, and their power to determine what kinds of legitimate inquiry and research are admissible or acceptable. We are also here to stand in defense of those who seek to defense of David against those who seek to tell us which of our colleagues is allowed to carry out evidence-based research and those who seek to police this process. While we are creating knowledge, it is difficult to do so if we are constantly looking over our shoulders or self-censoring our questions because we fear the wrath of those minutely scrutinizing our past history or our words and deeds and hoping to catch us out rather than really engaging with what we have discussed. If we really believe that Black Lives Matter, then we do not flinch when the Black lives that we're talking about are in Iraq, in Afghanistan, or in Palestine. We wish to debate, engage, argue, dissent, and develop and reshape knowledge through the spirit of inquiry. And to do so, we must acknowledge that we live in a society where Islamophobia is a reality, that today has resulted in 780 Muslim men being held prisoner without charge and deprived of virtually every basic human right in Guantanamo, for example. And it is at this point that I wish to say that the discussion of Islamophobia is intimately tied to the discussion of Black Lives Matter. The role of academics in challenging racism, in challenging the way in which society constructs um, situations where those in positions of power are able to stamp out anybody who dissents from their opinion and pretend it's in order to benefit the public interest. These are the things we must stand together against. And I'm proud to stand here as a trade unionist and an academic in solidarity with David, whose work I greatly admire. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepa. And we've seen from you and from other speakers how this imbalance of power absolutely requires academic freedom that can challenge the power narrative.
Yes, I do have a few thoughts, and I'd like to respond specifically to the question around what can we do, I think, which Tina asked at the start, and talk about a few things that I think we can do, whether it is in relation to David or whether it's in relation to Assange. I think the first has to be a recognition that we have nothing to be ashamed of. We are here proud, we are here strong because we are speaking the truth and we are standing up for what is right. And so, firstly, it's important for us to feel confident in what we are saying, because that helps to create greater calm and a greater ability to challenge some of the kinds of responses that we get without being too defensive. I think, secondly, it is often underestimated how much we can change opinion, because clearly not all of us are in control of the mass media, which is heavily controlled by those in establishment positions. We're not in control of politics, which is run by the Eton boys. So it becomes, you kind of lose your sense of agency when you are participating in these important conversations but have no power. And I think part of reclaiming that power is recognizing that we do have control at least over our spheres of influence, whether it is within our trade unions, within our constituency Labour Party, or within our local Green campaign, or within our friendship circles and within our family, to talk about some of these issues and make at least those who are not aware of these issues, whether they are older or younger than us, aware of what the issues are, and to engage with them and to debate with them respectfully about what's going on. I also think it's important to, if you are a member of a trade union, to please pass motions in your union branch to to show support for David, to show support for Julian Assange, because these might seem like gesture politics, but actually they make a big difference to where the establishment feels it's able to step against us. The more we make our views known, the more likely it is that they will be afraid, as they've retreated on so many things. I think it's also important to recognize, and this is something that I take very, I think I say from personal experience, that it's not, for example, all Black people who will push the cause of Black people. So, for example, Priti Patel and Rishi Sunak aren't going to be dealing with the lived experience that those of us who are further down this societal hierarchy have. And it is important to recognize and create allies amongst those who may not necessarily look like us or sound like us, but actually share with us the values and the important solidarity that we show with people like David. And it is this that must be cherished and must be pushed forward. And also, it is important for us, very important, to defend the rights of those whom we do not agree with, because it is in allowing them to speak and having serious debate and allowing them freedom of expression that we cherish our own. And that would be my response. I also wanted to slightly respond to Ron Mendel's question, if I may, Esther, but I might come back to that once others have spoken.
Thank you.